Mom, the hall is empty. Look at this embarrassment. I canceled the caterer because nobody can stand you. My son's words shot out, turning off the lights on my dream. I'm June, 70 years old, a retired public school cook. He thinks I'm dead weight, but he's forgotten who fed this entire neighborhood for 30 years. The smell of being the old lady from the VFW hall with the polished wooden floors always brought back good memories. But on that Saturday night, the aroma seemed to have soured. I was standing in the center of the hall, smoothing the skirt of my navy blue silk dress, the only luxury I'd allowed myself in 5 years. There were 70 white plastic chairs lined up, each one empty, staring at me like the teeth of a gaping mouth, laughing at my loneliness. In the corner, the cake table, with its white frosting and sugar flowers I had molded myself the night before, looked like a deserted island in a sea of silence. Kevin, my only son, paced back and forth with his phone to his ear, his brow furrowed in that important businessman expression he'd adopted ever since he became the manager of a luxury car dealership. Beside him, my daughter-in-law Tiffany drummed her long, red-painted nails on the welcome table, glancing at her wristwatch every 30 seconds. The sound of her heel tapping on the floor echoed like a judge's gavel sentencing my demise. "I told you, Kevin," Tiffany whispered, loud enough for me to hear, in a tone she disguised as concern. "Your mother lives in the past. People have better things to do on a Saturday night than come eat mini sausage rolls and listen to the same old stories from 30 years ago." I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air from the air conditioner fill my lungs. My fingers, calloused from peeling potatoes and stirring school lunch cauldrons, trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from an old sadness, the kind you feel when you realize you've raised a stranger in your own home. I looked at the clock on the wall. 7:00 p.m. The invitation said 7:00 p.m. People in our neighborhood ran on their own time, but the silence here was heavy, almost solid. Kevin hung up the phone and walked toward me. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked at the cake, then at the deflating balloons in the corner, and finally focused on a spot just over my left shoulder. "Mom, that's enough," he said, his voice harsh, without a trace of affection. "It's already 7:10. Nobody showed up. Nobody's coming." "They'll come, son. People work late. The bus takes a while." I tried to argue, my voice coming out weaker than I'd intended. I wanted to sound firm, like the June who ran the cafeteria with a single glance. But here, I was just a small old woman facing an impatient man. "It's not the bus, Mom," he exploded, gesturing with his hands. "It's you. You're just so overbearing. You're always nagging people, always meddling in the neighbors' lives, trying to help people who didn't ask for it, always telling the same old glory stories from when you were a community leader. People are tired of it. Nobody wants to come celebrate an old woman who only knows how to complain and lecture." His words hit me like physical slaps. I felt my face burn. Overbearing. The word echoed in my head. Me, who spent sleepless nights looking after the neighbors' kids so they could work. Me, who organized volunteer crews to pave our street when the city forgot we existed. Me, who organized bake sales to buy his, Kevin's own, school supplies, selling cake jars at the factory gate. Now I was just overbearing. I called the caterer and told them to cancel the delivery of the hot appetizers. He continued, merciless. "I'm not going to waste money on food that's just going to be thrown away. Let's go. Tiffany has a dinner with her firm's partners, and we can still make it if we leave now." "You canceled?" I asked, a lump forming in my throat. "But son, what if someone shows up?" "Nobody's coming, get it through your head," he shouted, and the sound reverberated in the empty hall. "Except that your time is over. You're just a burden now. Come on, get your purse. I'll drop you at home before we go." Tiffany was already at the door, holding the handle with that look of pity mixed with contempt that's worse than hate. I looked at the cake. I had made it with a pineapple and coconut filling. Kevin's favorite when he was a child. I remembered his birthdays when the house would be full, even though our walls weren't even plastered. I never canceled a single one of his parties, even when the month's money had run out. I always found a way. But there, facing this man in a well-cut suit who impatiently checked his watch, I realized the boy who loved pineapple cake no longer existed. He was ashamed of me, ashamed of my origins, of my rough hands, of my simple way of speaking, of my insistence on treating everyone like family. To him, success meant distancing himself from everything I represented. A strange calm washed over me. It wasn't resignation. It was something deeper, like the quiet before a summer storm. I wouldn't cry, not in front of them. They wanted me to fall apart, to get in their fancy car and thank them for the ride, confirming that I was just a dependent, inconvenient old woman. I adjusted my glasses, lifted my chin, and looked him in the eye for the first time that night. "I understand," I said. The words came out firm, dry. "You can go, Kevin." He blinked, confused by my lack of drama. He expected pleas. He expected tears. "What do you mean?" "You're coming with us." "I'm not leaving you alone here in this empty hall, in the middle of nowhere. It's dangerous and pathetic." "The hall is paid for until midnight," I replied, walking to one of the plastic chairs and sitting down with my spine straight like a queen on her throne. "The rental money came from my retirement fund, not your pocket. I'm staying." "Mom, stop being so stubborn," Kevin huffed, running a hand through his gelled hair. "What are you going to do here? Stare at the walls? This is ridiculous. Let's go. Tiffany is already waiting in the car." "Go, Kevin," I repeated, folding my hands in my lap. Hands that had held this boy when he was feverish. Hands that had carried bricks. Hands that now rested peacefully. "I need some time alone to think about how overbearing I am." He looked at me with anger, shaking his head. "Fine. Stay here then. Stay here with your pride and your dry cake. Just don't call me crying later, asking me to pick you up in the middle of the night because I won't answer. You chose this humiliation." He turned his back and left, slamming the glass door of the hall behind him. I heard the engine of the imported car start, the muffled sound of the tires on the asphalt, and then silence. I was alone. The hall seemed immense. The hum of the empty beverage fridge was the only sound. I looked at the 70 chairs. The pain came sharp, cutting. Was he right? Had I become a bitter old woman that people avoided? I remembered calling Mrs. Gable, my next-door neighbor, last week to invite her. She said she'd come. I remembered Mr. Henderson from the newsstand, who promised to bring his grandson. I remembered the girls who worked with me in the school kitchen. Why was no one here? It was 7:15 now. My eyes welled up, but I didn't let a tear fall. I took my cell phone out of my purse, an old model with large numbers because my eyesight isn't what it used to be. No missed calls, no messages. "You're just so overbearing." Kevin's phrase spun in my mind like a broken record. Maybe I was. Maybe by trying to take care of everyone, I had suffocated them. Maybe the love I thought I was giving was received as meddling. Doubt is the cruelest poison for a mother. It makes us question the very foundation of everything we've built. I stood up and walked to the cake table. I ran my finger along the edge of the tray, picking up a bit of frosting. Sweet, so sweet. Life had been bitter most of the time. Early widowhood, the heavy work of carrying industrial pots, the varicose veins that burned in my legs at night. But I always tried to put sweetness into the lives of others. And now, on my day, my 70-year milestone, I was being served vinegar. I sat down again, now facing the entrance. Time passed slowly. 7:30, 7:40. I started noticing details I hadn't seen before. There was a water stain on the ceiling shaped like a heart. There was a spider web in the corner of the window. Things that only solitude allows you to see. I began to take a mental inventory of my life. I had no riches, The house I live in still has the flooring my late husband installed 40 years ago. I have no jewelry, except for the thin wedding band I've never taken off. But I had memories. I remembered the name of every child who got a second helping of lunch because they had no food at home. I remembered every coat drive. Was none of that worth anything? Did the modern world, my son's world, have no room for memory? It was then that I realized something strange. Kevin said he canceled everything, but the invitations, the ones I asked my neighbor's granddaughter to design on the computer and print, I had delivered them hand to hand. I didn't use a family WhatsApp group because I know they get muted. I went to people's houses. I looked them in the eye. If Kevin canceled the caterer, he must have called the company. But how could he cancel the guests? He didn't have Mrs. Gable's phone number. He didn't know Mr. Henderson. He didn't know who Maria the seamstress was. A cold thought ran down my spine. He hadn't told anyone it was canceled. He simply assumed no one would come, or worse, he wanted no one to come to prove his point, to break me, to make me sell the house and move into that expensive place he calls a senior residence, where he wouldn't have to worry about the overbearing old woman anymore. I looked at the clock again. 8:00 p.m., an hour since he'd left. The hall was still empty, but something inside me had changed. The sadness was giving way to a hot ember in my chest. I wasn't wrong about my life. I couldn't be. 30 years of dedication don't just evaporate. Suddenly I heard a noise. It wasn't the wind. It was a rhythmic sound, distant but getting closer. It sounded like a drum. No, it was clapping. It was voices. I stood up from the chair, my heart pounding against my ribs, feeling like it wanted to jump out of my silk dress. The sound was coming from the street below, the steep hill leading up to the hall, where the bus doesn't run, and Kevin's fancy cars don't like to go because of the potholes. I walked to the dirty glass window that overlooked the street. The public lighting was weak, a sickly yellow that barely pierced the darkness of the old neighborhood. But I saw shadows, many shadows. Figures walking up the hill. Not 2 or 3, but a mass of people. I saw a makeshift banner. I heard a loud laugh I recognized immediately. It was Brenda's laugh, who worked with me in the daycare cleaning crew for 10 years. I heard the sound of a ukulele being tuned. They weren't coming by car. They weren't coming by Uber. They were coming in a procession, walking together, like we used to do for church festivals back in the day. Kevin thought the world ran on his clock, on the cold logic of business and digital invitations. He forgot that my world, June's world, runs on shoe leather, tight hugs, and consideration. He thought I was alone, because he left me alone. The glass door of the hall trembled with the first knock. I didn't open it right away. I stood there in the middle of the hall, feeling the energy shift. The cold, dead air of the room was suddenly invaded by a human warmth that passed through the walls even before the people entered. I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress one more time, and wiped the corner of my eye with the back of my hand. The "I understand" I had said to my son took on a new meaning. I understood all right. I understood that he knew nothing at all. The doorknob turned. The door burst open with a joyful bang, and the first thing I saw wasn't a guest, but a crowd that brought with it the smell of the street, the smell of flowers picked from home gardens, and most importantly, the smell of justice. My 70th birthday party hadn't been canceled. It was just beginning, and my son had no idea of the strength of the storm he had tried to silence. The first thing I felt wasn't joy. It was the physical impact of the noise. That funeral silence Kevin had left behind was shattered like a plate falling on a stone floor. Brenda came in first in that floral dress she wears to every wedding and baptism, her arms wide open and a smile that was missing a tooth on the side but lit up the hall more than the dusty chandelier. "We're here! We're here!" she shouted, and behind her came a flood of people. I stood there, paralyzed, hand on my chest, trying to understand how this empty hall had turned into a human anthill in a matter of seconds. They were neighbors from my street, people from the block over, the ladies from the cafeteria, Mr. Henderson with his grandson in his arms, Maria the seamstress, and even Reverend Jackson, who can barely walk because of his gout, was dragging himself along with a cane and a styrofoam cooler under his arm. But what happened? I stammered as Brenda enveloped me in a bear hug that smelled of cheap lavender and a long walk. It's after 8 o'clock. Kevin said nobody was coming. Brenda let me go, holding my shoulders and shaking me gently, laughing loudly. Kevin, that boy never knew anything, June. We rented a shuttle bus to bring the older folks, but the blasted thing broke down halfway up the hill. We had to walk, woman. And who could climb that hill quickly? The Reverend had to stop every 10 feet. Mrs. Gable lost a slipper. It was a whole soap opera. I looked at the crowd. They were sweaty. Some were wiping their foreheads with handkerchiefs. Others fanning their faces with their hands. But no one, absolutely no one, looked upset. On the contrary, there was an electric energy in the air, the vibration of people who had overcome an obstacle to be there. They hadn't come out of obligation. Nobody walks up a steep hill on a Saturday night out of obligation. They came for me. That's when reality hit me in a different way. Kevin looked at his watch and saw a delay. He looked at the empty room and saw failure. But he didn't know that our people have their own time. The time of hardship. The time of those who depend on unreliable transportation and tired legs. He judged my world with the ruler of his world, where everything is immediate and disposable. But June? Maria's voice came from my side, concerned. She was looking at the bare tables where the catering should have been. Where's the food? Didn't Kevin hire that fancy caterer from downtown? My blood ran cold. Shame tried to creep up my neck. How was I going to tell these 100 people that my son had taken the food away? That he thought they weren't worthy? That he thought I wasn't worthy? I took a deep breath, remembering the posture I'd adopted when he left. I wouldn't lie. Kevin canceled it, I said, my voice firm, though my heart ached. He thought you weren't coming because of the delay. He sent the catering company away so he wouldn't waste money. He said the party was over. A momentary silence fell over the group closest to me. I saw eyes meet. Indignation, shock. Brenda put her hands on her hips, ready to let out a curse, but I raised my hand, asking for calm. But I'm here, I continued, and the cake is there. It's pineapple and coconut. And then the miracle happened, the one my son's money could never buy. Mr. Henderson, who was holding a thermal bag, let out a hoarse laugh. He canceled? His loss. Because we all know a party's no good unless it's a potluck. And as if rehearsed, the sound of zippers opening and plastic lids snapping filled the hall. I brought chicken pot pie, the kind you like, June, shouted a former student from the back. Who's got pulled pork? Anyone bring bread? Another voice answered. The Reverend's cooler is full of soda. Maria brought the savory quiches. I watched, stunned, as those sad empty tables were covered with colorful serving dishes. Reused margarine tubs filled with side salads, bottles of root beer, and cornbread wrapped in aluminum foil. In 5 minutes, the emptiness that Kevin had so despised transformed into the most abundant feast I had ever seen. It didn't have the etiquette of expensive caterers. There were no waiters in white gloves serving tiny canapes. There was real food. Food made by the same calloused hands as mine. My eyes filled with tears, but this time I didn't hold them back. I let them roll. I walked to the makeshift buffet and ran my hand over a lace tablecloth that Mrs. Gable had hurriedly spread out. You brought food to my party? I asked, my throat tightening. Brenda hugged me from the side again. June, we knew Kevin would pull something. That boy turned his back on us a long time ago. We coordinated in the neighborhood association group chat. Everyone brings a dish, because if something's missing, we've got it covered. Nobody was going to leave you hanging. I stood there, absorbing that information. They knew. They knew my son better than I was willing to admit to myself. While I was trying to keep up appearances, pretending Kevin was a good, busy man, the entire neighborhood had already seen his arrogance, and instead of judging me for raising an ungrateful son, they had decided to protect me from his ingratitude. "You're just so overbearing," he had said. I looked at these people. Did I check on their kids' homework? Yes. Did I knock on their doors to tell them about vaccinations at the clinic? Yes. Did I organize the line at the soup kitchen and scold anyone who tried to cut? Yes. To Kevin, that was being overbearing, meddlesome. But there, seeing the affection in their eyes, I realized the truth that he, with all his degrees and imported cars, couldn't see. I wasn't overbearing. I was necessary. The meddling he condemned was the care that held this community together. It was my insistence that ensured many of the young men now opening beers and laughing in a corner hadn't turned to crime. It was my interfering that saved Mrs. Gable from a deep depression when her husband died, because I went there every day with a piece of cake to talk, even when she didn't want to open the door. The power I thought I had lost with age, the power Kevin said had become a burden, was right there, pulsing in front of me. I wasn't a disposable old woman in a rented hall. I was the matriarch of this big, messy, loud family. I felt my spine straighten even more. The ache in my joints seemed to have vanished. June. A tall young man with tattoos on his arms came toward me. It was Mikey. I remember scolding him countless times in the lunch line for stealing the younger kids' spots. Today, he was holding a sound system. "Plugged it in, ma'am. Can I put on some tunes? Got that 70s playlist you like?" "You can, Mikey," I replied, feeling a youthful joy bubble up in my chest. "And turn it up loud. I want the sound to reach the main avenue." The music started. Earth, wind, and fire. September. The joyful irony of the song made me smile. Kevin only wanted money. We just wanted to love. As the crowd started to dance and children ran between the plastic chairs, I began to think strategically. Kevin and Tiffany thought I was sitting in the dark, crying, learning my lesson in insignificance. They were probably at an expensive restaurant right now, eating dishes with French names that barely fill you up, bad-mouthing me to their partners, laughing at the stubborn old woman. They were absolutely certain of my failure. That was my advantage. I took my phone out of my purse again, looked at the camera. I was never very good with technology. Kevin always sighed when I asked for help sending a photo. "Mom, it's intuitive," he'd say impatiently. But I learned on my own. I learned by watching my honorary grandchildren, Brenda's kids. I called over Jessica, Mrs. Gable's granddaughter, a 15-year-old who never put her phone down, not even to eat. "Jessica, honey, come here." She came over, chewing gum, her face illuminated by the screen. "Hey, Grandma June, happy birthday." "Thank you, dear. Listen, do you know how to do those live videos? The ones that show up on Facebook and Instagram right away?" She laughed. "Of course I do. You want to go live?" "I do," I replied, a sparkle in my eyes I hadn't felt in years. "But I don't want to be on it alone. I want you to film everything. The food, the dancing, the cake. And I want you to tag Kevin and Tiffany. You're friends with them on Facebook, right?" "Totally. Tiffany's always posting pictures of expensive purses. I follow her for the laughs," Jessica said with the brutal honesty of teenagers. "Perfect. Then start filming. Show the world that June's party just changed ownership." Jessica raised her phone. "We're live, Grandma June. Say something." I looked into the camera lens, not with anger. Anger is for the powerless. I looked with serenity, fixed my hair, and smiled that smile of someone who has seen a lot in this life. "The party's just getting started, folks," I said. "Whoever thought this hall would be empty forgot that June never walks alone. Come on down. We've got real food and real people." The music got louder. The crowd cheered in the background, raising plastic cups and pieces of pot pie. I knew Kevin was addicted to his phone. I knew Tiffany couldn't go 10 minutes without checking her social media to see how many likes she'd gotten. They would see it. Maybe not right now, but soon. And when they did, they wouldn't see an abandoned mother. They would see a queen surrounded by her court. I walked to the middle of the dance floor. Mikey pulled me in for a dance. My swollen, tired feet, from 70 years of struggle, seemed to float on the worn wooden floor. But in the back of my mind, as I twirled to the music, the plan was forming. It wasn't enough just to show I was happy. Kevin needed to understand that he didn't have the power to cancel me. He thought he paid my bills, that the house I lived in was his investment, that my life was in his hands. He forgot that the house is in my name. He forgot that the land his dealership is on. Well, that was an old story I kept under lock and key. A story from when his father was alive and bought that cheap land at an auction nobody cared about. Kevin built his empire on a foundation that was mine. I always let him think he was the owner of everything so as not to hurt his ego, so he could feel like the man of the house. But the overbearing old woman here kept all the papers in a cookie tin under the bed. I looked at the entrance. The night was just beginning, and my son, sitting at his fancy dinner, had no idea that the notification pinging on his phone soon wouldn't just be a party video. It would be the beginning of the fall of his pedestal of arrogance. The music paused for a moment, and Reverend Jackson tapped his cane on the floor, asking for the floor. "Sister June," he boomed with his thunderous voice, "before we cut the cake, we want to say something." The hall fell silent. Even the children stopped. "Your son didn't come," he said bluntly. "But look around you. You have 100 children here tonight. And a real child isn't the one who comes from your womb, but the one who stays when your stomach is empty." A chorus of amens and applause filled the room. I smiled, but inside, my determination hardened like cement. I loved Kevin. God knows I did. But a mother's love is also about teaching, and he needed a lesson that life hadn't given him yet, but that I, June, was about to teach. I picked up a cup of soda, raised it in a silent toast to Jessica's camera, which was still recording, and took a sip. The sweet fizz went down my throat. It was time for June to stop being the behind-the-scenes cook and take charge of the main kitchen. The banquet was served, and justice would be the main course. Boom. As the funky rhythm of earth, wind and fire echoed off the walls of that hall, making the floorboards vibrate under the feet of more than 100 people, I felt, for the first time in many years, in control of my own story. It wasn't that nervous control of someone trying to please everyone, running back and forth with trays, worried if the appetizers were hot or the drinks were cold. It was the serene control of someone who knows exactly where they stand. I was dancing with Mikey, spinning slowly because of my knee, but with a smile that wouldn't fit on my face. With every turn, I'd glance over at Jessica in the corner, her phone held high, broadcasting everything live. She'd give me a thumbs up, indicating the viewership was climbing. "You're famous, June." "Ah," Mikey shouted over the sound of the horns and the music. "We got people commenting from Florida." I laughed. Famous? I didn't want fame. I wanted one specific person to see this. I wanted Kevin, over at his fancy restaurant eating escargot or whatever other thing that looks like seasoned rubber, to choke on his own arrogance. I excused myself from Mikey and went to the table where Jessica was strategically positioned near the cake and the platters of homemade food. The table looked like a king's feast, but a king who likes substance, not frills. "How are we doing, honey?" I asked, wiping the sweat from my brow with a paper napkin. "Grandma June, you're not going to believe this." Jessica's eyes widened, the phone screen illuminating her young face. "There are 300 people watching right now. Everyone in the neighborhood is sharing it in the groups. Look at this comment from Mrs. Ortiz at the pharmacy. What a shame that son would trade a party like this for some rich people dinner. Long live June." I felt a warmth in my chest that wasn't from dancing. It was validation. For years, Kevin had made me feel small. He'd comment on my clothes, my loud way of talking, my habit of collecting plastic containers. He said I was from the Stone Age, but there on the screen of that modern gadget, the world was saying the opposite. The world was saying that character doesn't get old. "Jessica," I said, leaning closer and lowering my voice, though the party noise protected me. Has he seen it?" The girl bit her lip, hesitating for a second, and then nodded. "He has, Grandma June. His profile popped up in the viewer list about 5 minutes ago, and so did Tiffany's." My heart skipped a beat, but I forced it to calm down. This was exactly what I wanted. "Did they comment anything?" "Not yet," she said, then let out a mischievous giggle. "They must be in shock. They thought you'd be crying in the dark, right?" "They did," I confirmed, smoothing the lace tablecloth. "But they forgot that someone who plants seeds their whole life doesn't go without a harvest." I returned to the center of the hall. I needed them to see more. I needed them to see the genuine joy, the kind Kevin's money could no longer buy. I went over to Brenda, who was pouring soda for the kids. "Brenda, the cake," I called out. "Let's sing happy birthday now." "But already, June? It's only 9 o'clock, she said, surprised. "It's now, while the iron is hot," I replied, winking at her. Brenda, sharp as ever, understood there was more to my request. She clapped her hands and shouted, getting everyone's attention. The impromptu DJ lowered the music. The silence that followed wasn't the emptiness from before. It was a silence of expectation, charged with affection. People gathered around the table. I saw faces I've known for 40 years. I saw Mr. Henderson. I saw Maria. I saw the children I helped raise at the daycare who now brought their own kids. Jessica positioned herself right in front, making sure the camera captured my face and the pineapple cake. I took a deep breath. This moment was my stage, and my target audience wasn't in the room. They were on the other side of a screen, probably feeling shame creep up the starched collars of their dress shirts. "Everyone," my voice came out clear, projected like in the days when I organized the lunch line. "Before I blow out the candle, I want to say thank you." There was a murmur of approval. "Earlier today I was told this party wasn't going to happen," I began, looking directly into the lens of Jessica's phone. "I was told I was overbearing, that I was a burden, that no one would come to give me a hug. I was told my time had passed and that I should retreat into my insignificance." I saw some people shake their heads in disgust. Mrs. Gable wiped away a tear. "But whoever said that doesn't know the strength of our people," I continued, raising my chin. "Whoever said that forgot that family isn't just who shares your last name or your blood. Family is who holds your hand when the ground disappears from under you. Family is who brings a dish of macaroni and cheese and a smile when all you have is an empty hall." The applause started timidly and then grew. "So this first piece of cake," I picked up the server, feeling the weight of the moment. "Tradition usually says the first piece goes to the most important person, usually a son or a husband. Kevin has received the first piece every year since he was 1 year old. He expected it as a divine right. This first piece isn't going to someone who shares my blood, it's going to someone who shares my heart." I cut a generous slice with plenty of filling. "This piece is for Brenda," I announced, "who never let me forget who I am." The hall erupted in applause and whistles. Brenda came over, crying, to hug me, and the scene was chaotic and beautiful, with frosting smudging her cheek and everyone singing, "For she's a jolly good fellow." It was at that exact moment that I felt my purse vibrate on the chair behind me. It was an insistent, long vibration. A phone call. I excused myself from Brenda and went to my purse. I picked up the phone. On the screen, a photo of Kevin smiling in a blue suit on a day he was in a good mood. "Son, calling." I stared at the device. Jessica was still filming the party, now focused on Mr. Henderson telling a joke. No one was looking at me in that second. My finger hovered over the green answer button. The mother's habit is strong. The instinct to answer on the first ring, to solve his problem, to ask, "What's wrong, son? Is everything okay?" That instinct screamed inside me, but then I remembered the phrase, "You're just so overbearing." I remembered his back as he walked away. I remembered the silence of the hall. I let it ring. The phone vibrated until the call went to voicemail. Seconds later, it rang again, insistent, authoritarian. The ring seemed to say, "Answer now. I am your son. I control this relationship." I turned the phone face down on the table, muffling the sound and the light. I didn't answer. I went back to the party, got a cup of soda, and toasted with Maria. For the first time in 70 years, I left Kevin waiting. Half an hour later, the party was in full swing. A group had started an impromptu sing-along. I was sitting, resting my legs, watching everything with that feeling of a mission accomplished. That's when Jessica came running over with an expression like she'd seen a ghost. "Grandma June, Kevin sent a message in the live chat, and he messaged you too." I can imagine. "What did he say?" I asked, keeping my cool, though my stomach did a little flip. Jessica showed me her phone screen where the comments were scrolling. There was a message pinned from the Kevin's Luxury Autos profile. "Mom, what is this circus? Take this down now. My partners are watching. Are you trying to humiliate me? Answer the phone." I read it, and instead of fear, I felt a deep pity. He wasn't worried about me. He wasn't worried if I was okay, if I had eaten, if I was happy. He was worried about his partners, about his image. I picked up my own phone. There were 5 missed calls and 3 WhatsApp messages. "Mom, answer." "This is ridiculous. Did you gather all that riffraff just to spite me?" "Tiffany is crying from embarrassment. Delete this video now or we're going to have a serious talk tomorrow about the rent on your house." I stopped at that last message. The rent on your house. He always used that. The veiled threat. The house where I live, where he grew up, he claimed it was his because he'd been paying the property taxes for the last few years and had renovated the facade. He liked to say he supported me, that he gave me a roof over my head. I took a deep breath, smelling the mix of cake and cheap perfume that filled the hall. That smell was the smell of freedom. Kevin thought he had power because he had cash flow. He thought I was a helpless old woman who needed his charity to have a place to sleep. He didn't know. He really didn't know. Or he'd forgotten, or his arrogance had erased from his memory how things really worked. I started to type. My fingers didn't tremble anymore. I didn't use internet slang. I typed slowly, pecking at the keys, but each word was a brick in the construction of my defense. "Kevin, the party isn't ending now. The hall is mine until midnight. And about that serious talk tomorrow, I think that's a great idea. Bring Tiffany. We really do need to talk about some papers, but not about rent. We're going to talk about the deed to the land your dealership is on, the one you think the bank has, but which is actually in your overbearing mother's cookie tin." I hit send. I saw the 2 check marks turn blue instantly. I locked the phone screen and put it back in my purse. I lifted my head and saw Reverend Jackson calling me over for a photo with the church group. I smiled, adjusted my glasses, and went. The execution of my plan had begun. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cause a scene at his showroom. I just needed to remind him who held the foundations of the sandcastle he lived in. The rest of the party passed like a good dream. We ate, we drank, we laughed. Around 11:30, we started to clean up the hall. No one left a mess behind. Everyone helped sweep, collect the plates, and tie up the trash bags. These were my people. People who know that dignity is also about leaving a place clean for the next person. When the last light was turned off and Mr. Thompson with his van, who had finally fixed the engine, honked outside to take people home, I stood alone for a minute on the sidewalk, waiting for the Uber Jessica had ordered for me. The night was cool. The overcast sky hid the stars, but I didn't need them. I had the glow of my phone screen, which lit up with a new message. It wasn't an angry voice note or a demand. It was a short message, different from his tone before. "Mom, what are you talking about? What deed?" I smiled at the deserted street. Fear had switched sides. Doubt had been planted. The rideshare car arrived. The driver, a friendly young man, asked, "Good party, ma'am. Saw a lot of happy people leaving." "The best of my life, son," I replied, getting into the car and closing the door gently. The party where I discovered I'm not a guest in other people's lives. I own the hall. As the car pulled away, descending the hill toward my house, I knew the real battle would be the next day. Kevin would come at me with everything he had. He'd bring lawyers, maybe. He'd bring his usual emotional manipulation. He'd bring Tiffany and her sharp nails. But he would find a different June. He would find the woman who had kept secrets for 30 years to protect his future, and who would now use those same secrets to protect her own dignity. The cookie tin under my bed, that rusty metal one with faded flowers, was worth more than all the imported cars in his showroom. And tomorrow he would discover the real price of calling your own mother disposable. "Driver," I called out, "could you turn up the radio? I love this song." And I went home singing along, ready for war, but with a heart as light as someone who knows that for the first time she holds the most powerful weapon of all, the documented truth. The overbearing old woman had just become a dangerous old woman. Sunday dawned with a heavy, gray sky, the kind that promises a downpour. But the thunder that woke me didn't come from the clouds. It came from my iron gate. It was 7:30 in the morning when the pounding started. Violent, desperate, making the neighbor's dog bark nonstop. I didn't need to look out the window to know who it was. The engine of that imported car has a specific roar, a sound of money and arrogance I knew well. I got out of bed slowly, my body complaining a little from the previous night's dancing, but it was a good ache, the ache of having lived. I put on my faded chenille robe, slipped on my slippers, and went to the kitchen. I put the water on to boil. Coffee came first. Hurricane Kevin could wait for the grounds to settle in the filter. The pounding continued, now accompanied by muffled shouts. "Mom! Open this door! I know you're in there!" I walked down the hallway of my simple house, the one he'd threatened to have a talk about the rent on. I opened the living room door, unlocked the screen door, and went to the gate. Kevin was red-faced, breaking into a cold sweat, wearing the same clothes as last night. His tie was loose, hanging around his neck like a noose. Tiffany was in the car, window rolled up, wearing enormous sunglasses, looking like a frightened horsefly. I opened the gate without a word. Kevin stormed in like a bull in an arena. "Have you lost your mind?" he yelled, shoving his phone in my face. "Look at this. Look what you did." On the screen was Jessica's video. Thousands of views, comments from people I didn't even know, calling my son ungrateful, heartless, a wannabe big shot. "Good morning to you too, son," I replied, turning my back and walking into the house. "The coffee's brewing." "Coffee? You think I came here for coffee?" He followed me, his expensive shoes clacking on my worn linoleum floor. "My partners called me at 6 a.m. The dealership's group chat is on fire. Do you have any idea the damage this little trailer park party is going to do to my business? The company's image, Mom. Its image." I entered the kitchen and the smell of fresh coffee calmed my nerves. I poured myself a cup. I didn't offer him one. The manners I taught him, he'd thrown away. No need to waste mine now. "The company's image," I repeated, blowing on the steam from my cup. "Funny you should talk about image. Yesterday, when you left me alone in an empty hall, the image you had of me was of a disposable old woman. Now that the world has seen who's who, you're worried." "Delete that video," he ordered, slamming his hand on the Formica table. The cup rattled. "Call that ghetto girl, Jessica, and tell her to take it all down now. Say it was a misunderstanding, that I was sick. Make something up." Tiffany entered the kitchen then. She didn't shout. Her tactic was different. Poison laced with honey. "June," she began, taking off her sunglasses. Her eyes were puffy, but not from crying, from contained rage. "Kevin is upset, you understand. We only want what's best for you. That video exposes the family. It makes you look ridiculous. We can fix this. Kevin can pay for a trip for you, a cruise. How about that? You disappear for a few days, we'll say you were confused." I let out a dry laugh. Confused. The classic tactic of calling an elderly person senile to invalidate the truth. "Sit down," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had a weight that made them both stop. "I am not sitting in this dumpy kitchen to listen to a sermon," Kevin seethed. "Are you going to delete the video? Or what, Kevin?" I interrupted, looking him dead in the eye. "Are you going to evict me? Stop paying the utility bills you claim to pay out of charity?" "That's exactly it," he exploded. "You live off me. This house, the food, the medicine. If I turn off the tap, you'll be living on handouts at that Brenda's house. So yes, I'm in charge here. I have the money. I own the roof over your head." It was the cue I needed. I placed my cup in the sink carefully. I walked to my bedroom. They stayed in the kitchen, grumbling, thinking I'd gone to get my phone to delete the video. I knelt beside my bed. The cool floor touched my knees, but I didn't feel it. I pulled out a cardboard box of old shoes, and deep inside, I found what I was looking for. The round blue metal tin of Danish butter cookies, with rust on the edges. That tin had been with me for 30 years. I took the tin to the kitchen and placed it in the center of the table. The sound of metal on formica echoed like a courtroom gavel. Kevin looked at the tin with contempt. "What's this? Moldy cookies? You really are going senile." I pried open the lid. The smell of old paper and mothballs rose up. I removed the spools of thread, the needles, the lost buttons from shirts I'd sewn for him as a child. At the bottom, folded in 4, was a manila envelope. The paper was yellowed, stained by time, but the typewriter ink was still legible. I pulled out the document, smoothed it on the table, and pushed it in front of Kevin. "Read it," I ordered. He huffed, picking up the paper with his fingertips as if it were something dirty. Tiffany craned her neck, curious. "Deed of sale. Garden View Estates. Block B, Lot 4. He read aloud with disdain, until his voice trailed off. He stopped. His eyes scanned to the bottom of the page, then back to the top. "What is this?" His voice came out thin, unrecognizable. "It's the deed to the land on the main avenue," I answered, sitting down and crossing my arms. "The land where your dealership is, Kevin. Where you built that beautiful glass building." "But Dad said it belonged to the company," he stammered, the sweat on his forehead now visibly running. "He said he bought it at auction for the business." "Your father did buy it, but his business went bankrupt before he could transfer it to the company's name. To avoid losing the land to creditors back then, he put it in the only clean name in the family. Mine." Kevin looked at Tiffany, who was pale, her mouth slightly open. "This is worthless." He tried to laugh, but it was a nervous, broken sound. "I built there. I have possession. I pay the property taxes." "You pay the property taxes because that's the least a tenant should do," I said calmly. "And as for the building, you built on someone else's land, son. Without a lease, without formal authorization, only with your mother's verbal permission. A verbal agreement, I think that's what the lawyers call it. And a verbal agreement can be terminated at any time. The owner just has to ask for the property back." Tiffany, who understands more about money than people, was the first to grasp the size of the hole they were in. She snatched the paper from his hand and read it frantically. "Kevin," she whispered, her voice trembling, "if this is valid, if the land is hers, the entire company's capital is compromised. The building is an improvement on a third party's land. If she sells the land, we lose the location, we lose the business." The silence that fell in the kitchen was heavy, solid. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like an airplane engine. Kevin looked at me. for the first time in years. He wasn't looking down on me. He was looking at me with terror. The overbearing old woman, the ignorant cook, the woman he thought he supported, held the power to demolish his empire with a single signature. You wouldn't do that, he said, trying to find his arrogance again, but failing. I'm your son. Funny, I replied without blinking. Last night, when you canceled my party and left me there, you didn't act like a son. You acted like a boss firing a useless employee. Mom, it was a moment of stress, he tried to argue, raising his hands. Tiffany had that important dinner. I was on edge. Don't lie, Kevin. I cut him off. You're ashamed of me. You think I'm a burden. You said I live at your expense. Let's do the math now. I took a piece of paper towel and a ballpoint pen from the table. The rent for a commercial lot that size on the avenue, what does that go for today? About $5,000 a month? I asked. Tiffany nodded mutely. 5,000. You've been there for 10 years. Without rent increases, without interest, that's almost $600,000 that I never collected. $600,000 that I gave you to build your rich life. And in return, you pay my $80 electricity bill and think you have the right to humiliate me, to say you canceled my birthday because I'm overbearing. Kevin sank into the chair. He seemed to have shrunk. The expensive suit looked too big for the small man inside it. You want money? Is that it? He asked, still not understanding anything about dignity. I'll start paying you rent, $1,000 a month. Is that good? I shook my head, feeling a deep sadness mixed with satisfaction. He still thought everything could be solved with his wallet. I don't want your money. Kevin, I live just fine on my retirement and my baking. This house here is mine too. The deed is in the tin, under the spools of thread. You've never paid rent on this house. You only paid the property tax because you listed your company's address here to dodge inspections in the beginning. I know everything, son. I pretended I didn't so you could feel like a man, so you could feel important. I stood up and went to the window. The rain had started to fall outside, washing the dust from the street. What are you going to do? Tiffany asked, her voice soft, terrified. Are you going to take the dealership? I turned to face them. I could. I could sell that land tomorrow to that developer who's always sending me letters. They'd pay cash. I could go to that luxury retirement home you talk so much about and live like a queen. But I'm a mother, and a mother is a foolish creature who doesn't give up, even when her child doesn't deserve it. Kevin raised his head, a spark of hope in his eyes. So, everything stays the same? No. I slammed my hand on the table again, making them both jump. Nothing stays the same. The rules of the game have changed. I took the document and put it back in the tin, closing the lid firmly. First, the video stays up. That's your punishment. Deal with the shame. Learn that actions have consequences. If your partners complain, tell them the truth. That you were a terrible son and you're trying to be better. Humility never killed anyone. Kevin swallowed hard. Second, the disrespect ends. No more mom, this, mom, that. No more Tiffany rolling her eyes when I tell a story. In my house, you enter with your head bowed and you ask for my blessing. And at my party, my next party, if I invite you, you come, and you come smiling, and you eat pineapple cake without complaining about the gluten. Third, I continued, seeing Tiffany nod frantically. I want a real contract. We're going to formalize the lease on the land. But Mom, you said you didn't want money, Kevin whined. I don't want it for me. The full amount of the rent will be donated every month to the community daycare where Brenda works and to the public nursing home in the neighborhood, in the name of the June Foundation. You will deposit it religiously on the 5th of every month, and if you're one day late, I sell the land. Kevin was pale, doing mental calculations. He knew he had no choice. He knew any judge would rule in my favor with that deed in hand. He was cornered by his own greed. Okay, he whispered. Okay, Mom. We'll draw up the contract. Good, Now get out of my kitchen. I want to finish my coffee in peace, and then I'm going to church to give thanks for the beautiful party I had yesterday." They stood up slowly, as if they were injured. Kevin paused at the door, looked at the cookie tin on the table, and then at me. There was something new in his eyes. Not love, not yet. It was fear, and maybe, for the first time, a sliver of respect. Forced respect, but respect nonetheless. "Bye, Mom," he said quietly. "Your blessing, Kevin," I corrected. He hesitated, clenched his jaw, but he lowered his head. "Your blessing, Mom. God bless you and give you some sense, son." They left in the rain. I watched through the window as they ran to the car. Tiffany was arguing with him, gesturing nervously. Kevin got in the car and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, before starting the engine. When the car disappeared around the corner, I didn't feel the emptiness from before. I felt an immense fullness. I picked up my phone. There was a new message from Jessica. "Grandma June, the video hit 50,000 shares. People are asking for the cake recipe." I smiled. The cake recipe was easy: flour, sugar, eggs, and pineapple. The recipe for life was more complicated: patience, love, and when necessary, an old cookie tin full of documents that prove you should never underestimate a woman who built her life with her own 2 hands. I went to the tin, gave the rusty lid an affectionate pat, and took it back to its safe hiding place. Power doesn't need to be flaunted all the time. It just needs to be there. Kept in reserve, ready to be used when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. Now I had an empire to manage, and the first royal decree would be to take a hot shower and put on my Sunday best. The overbearing old woman had just become the majority shareholder in her son's life, and he would have to work very hard to earn back his shares. The rain outside was washing the asphalt, but in here, the storm had passed, leaving the air clean, fresh, and smelling of victory. 6 months have passed since that night at the hall. Time, which at my age usually rushes by too quickly, seems to have slowed down to match the new rhythm I've imposed on life. Today is a sunny Tuesday, the kind that dries the laundry on the line in half an hour. And I'm here, standing in the middle of the playground at the Aunt Brenda Community Daycare, breathing in the smell of fresh paint and beans seasoned with garlic. It's not the same leaky daycare where we had to put out buckets on rainy days anymore. The roof is new, its red tiles gleaming in the sun. The walls, once peeling and showing the raw brick, now boast a vibrant golden yellow, painted during a community workday we organized last month. And the money for all this? Well, let's just say the family's real estate division has finally started providing the social returns it was meant to. I look toward the gate and see Kevin's silver car pull up. It used to be that my heart would race with anxiety, wondering if he was coming to fight or to ask for something. Today, my heart beats steadily, with the calm of someone holding the reins. He gets out of the car, adjusts his suit, which seems a little less starched lately, and walks toward us. He doesn't bring flowers, but he brings something much more useful: the monthly manila envelope. "Your blessing, Mom?" he says as he approaches, taking off his sunglasses. His voice still carries that tone of someone always in a hurry, but the blessing comes out automatically, without the angry hesitation of that rainy morning in my kitchen. "God bless you, Kevin," I reply, holding out my hand for the envelope. "Right on time." "The 5th is the 5th. The bank was crowded, but I managed to get the cash," he comments, looking around. His gaze lands on the new, colorful slide where 2 children are laughing loudly. The playground looks good. I open the envelope right there. I count the bills. $5,000. The rent from the dealership's land, which now pays for the milk, meat, and maintenance of this place. "It looks great, son," I say, putting the money in my old leather purse. "You know who helped paint that wall over there?" "Mikey. The one you used to call a bum. He's the kids' activity monitor now. His salary comes out of this envelope." Kevin furrows his brow, uncomfortable, but he doesn't argue. He's learned to swallow his sharp retorts. The unofficial contract we signed, with the original deed as collateral, worked a miracle on his education that 30 years of discipline never could. Tiffany wanted to know if you're coming to dinner on Sunday. He changes the subject, kicking a small stone on the ground. She wants to make a roast. I smile inwardly. Tiffany, the eye-rolling daughter-in-law, now tags me in Instagram posts with the caption, "My mother-in-law, my inspiration." After the party video went viral and the whole town took my side, she, being as sharp as she is, realized that fighting with Grandma June was social suicide. Now she tries to attach her image to mine, playing the part of the united, charitable family. I let her. As long as her performance ensures my son treats me with respect and pays what he owes the community, I'll accept a supporting role on her social media feed. Tell her I'll be there, I answer. But let her know I'm bringing dessert. I don't trust that boxed pudding she makes. Kevin lets out a short, almost genuine laugh. Okay, Mom, I'll tell her. Just then, Brenda comes out of the kitchen, drying her hands on her apron. Hey, Kevin, she yells without any ceremony. Since you're here with that big fancy car, you want to take these boxes of donations over to the nursing home. Our delivery guy bailed on us. I see Kevin freeze. He looks at his pristine imported car, not a speck of dust on it. Then he looks at the cardboard boxes piled in the corner, filled with used clothes and shoes. The Kevin from 6 months ago would have laughed in her face and driven off, tires screeching. He looks at me. I just raise an eyebrow, waiting. Sure, you can put them in the trunk, he grumbles, taking the key out of his pocket. But be careful not to scratch the bumper. Brenda winks at me and calls 2 of the older boys to help carry them. I watch my son, the luxury car dealership manager, opening the trunk of his high-end vehicle to load donations for the poor. He's not doing it because he suddenly became a saint. He's doing it because he knows the overbearing old woman is watching. But you know what? Fake it till you make it. If he's forced to help enough, eventually he might discover it doesn't hurt. Thank you, son, I say, touching his arm. The fabric of his suit is cool, but I feel the tense muscle underneath relax a little. You're doing a good thing. He looks at me, and for a second, I see the little boy who used to get frosting all over his face. Yeah, well, you're a tough old bird, June. Someone has to be, Kevin. The world is already too soft on those with money and too hard on those without. I'm just balancing the scales. He gets in his car, now loaded with forced charity, and drives off slowly. I stand there, watching the car disappear around the corner. And I feel a peace I haven't felt in decades. The peace of someone who doesn't fear the future because she has secured the present. I go back inside the daycare. The children are having their snack time. The smell of chocolate milk fills my nostrils and brings back memories. How many times did I serve watery milk because we didn't have the budget? How many times did I see a child cry from hunger? Now I see full tables. The money Kevin used to spend on a new car every year now fills little bellies. I sit down in one of the tiny children's chairs and just watch. Brenda sits next to me, sighing with exhaustion. Who would have thought, June? She says, pouring us both a cup of coffee. The car baron himself running errands for us. You're a dangerous woman. I'm not dangerous, Brenda. I take a sip of the strong coffee. I just got tired of being invisible. We spend our whole lives building the floor for other people to walk on. And when we get old, they want us to become the doormat. I decided I'm not a doormat. I'm the foundation. And if you mess with the foundation, the whole building comes down. She laughs, that wonderful laugh that shakes her whole body. And that cookie tin? Is it still there? It's there, under the bed, guarded by angels and my insomnia. But I don't think I'll need to open it again anytime soon. Fear is an excellent guardian of memory. The afternoon fades gently. I help clear the tables. I chat with the mothers who come to pick up their children. Many of them saw the video of my party. They look at me differently now. I'm not just the elderly neighbor who complains about loud music anymore. I'm the woman who beat the system. Some come to me for advice. June, my husband's drinking too much. June, my son doesn't want to study. I listen. I advise. I've unintentionally become a sort of justice of the peace for the neighborhood. They call me wise. I know I'm just stubborn. Stubbornness, when used for good, becomes perseverance. By the time I get home, the sun has set. My house is quiet, but not empty. It's filled with my own presence. I walk into the kitchen, run my hand over the Formica table where the deal was verbally sealed. My phone buzzes. It's a message in the family group chat. Yes, they've added me to the group now, and I'm no longer the one who gets removed. It's a photo from Tiffany. She's posted a selfie holding a dish of pudding, probably bought at a fancy bakery and transferred to her own dish, with the caption, "Prepping for Sunday family dinner. So excited to have my beloved mother-in-law over. Family is everything blessed." I could comment, expose her, say she doesn't even know how to turn on the oven. But why? Her hypocrisy is the tribute that vice pays to virtue. If she needs to pretend to love me to get likes, let her pretend. What matters is that in the real world, off the phone screen, respect has been restored. I go to my room and pull the shoebox out from under the bed. I take out the cookie tin. The cold metal in my hand is comforting. I open the lid. The smell of stored memories rises. The manila envelope is there, intact. The deed, my trump card. But next to it, I see other things. Old photos of a toothless Kevin, his school report card with F's that I helped him turn into A's. A crooked drawing he made for me on Mother's Day in 1990, with the words, "Mom, I love you," scrawled on it. For a long time, I thought these papers of affection were my treasure. I found out the hard way that in the world out there, what matters is the paper stamped by a notary. But looking now, I realize that both are necessary. The deed guarantees my roof and the respect of my adult son. The drawing ensures I don't forget who he was and who he might still be, deep down, if I keep polishing away the thick shell that money built around him. I put the tin away. I no longer need to sleep with one eye open. On Sunday, lunch at Kevin's house was civilized. Their house is beautiful, cold, full of furniture that looks like it's from a magazine and that you're afraid to sit on. But there was a chair at the head of the table set for me. Tiffany served the food, smiling too much, talking too loud. Kevin was quieter. At one point, while Tiffany was getting more wine from the kitchen, he looked at me. "Mom," he said quietly, "is that money really helping the daycare?" "It is, son. We bought new cribs last week. The babies don't have to sleep on mats on the floor anymore." He nodded, pushing his food around with his fork. "I drove by there yesterday on my way home from work. I saw they painted the wall. It looks nice. The community takes pride when it has resources." There was a silence, but it wasn't heavy. It was reflective. "I didn't know the land was worth so much," he confessed, not looking me in the eye. "I mean, not the money value. The value to you. I just thought it was dirt." "Dirt is where you plant things, Kevin. You planted cars and harvested money. I planted dignity and harvested respect. The land is the same. It's the seed that's different." He raised his eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw admiration. Not fear of the deed, not shame for his poor mother. Admiration. "You're a real pain in the ass, Mom," he said with a half smile. "I am," I replied, smiling back, cutting a piece of the roast. "And you'd do well not to forget it. Because pains in the ass don't die easily, and they never give up." Tiffany returned from the kitchen with her phone in hand, ready for another live stream. "Let's make a toast for my followers," she chirped, fixing her hair. I raised my glass of grape juice. Kevin raised his wine. Tiffany smiled at the camera. "A toast to family!" she shouted. "A toast to the truth," I corrected, looking into the lens. They drank. I drank. The video was posted. More comments praising June. I read some later, lying in my bed, in my simple house, with my waxed linoleum floor. "This woman is an inspiration," one comment said. "I wish I had a mother like that," said another. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my 70 years, but not as a burden. It felt like armor. I had reclaimed my voice. I had reclaimed my place at the table. And most importantly, I had taught my son that a mother's love is unconditional, but a mother's patience has a limit, and documentation. Tomorrow is Monday. Time to go to the bank and check the statement for the neighborhood association's account. I have plans to renovate the park. The mayor better watch out, because June has developed a taste for management. And if he thinks he can ignore me because I'm a little old lady in flip-flops, I'll be more than happy to show him that size isn't everything. But a land deed? Oh, that is. They say life begins at 70. I don't know if it begins, but I can guarantee that at 70, you lose the fear of making life happen on your own terms. The hall was empty that night, but my life has never been so full. I turn off the bedside lamp. The darkness is comforting. Outside, the city sleeps. In here, the lioness rests, with her cookie tin guarding the kingdom, ready to wake up and roar again as soon as the sun rises. Because being overbearing was the best decision I ever made.